Good afternoon. We move on with the workshops by Linoleum Festival, and now we're commemorating Oleg Pedan, a Ukrainian puppet animator and a teacher who is a well-known artist. Today, his close colleagues will be talking to him, who is Anastasiia Falileieva, a graduate of Karpenko-Kari University, Nataliia Marchenkova, co-director of Iron Wolf, his wife Volodymyr Pedan, Iryna Sergeeva, a camera person, Oleg Obod, and Volodymyr Sleptsov, a producer. I suggest we look back at the life of Oleg Pedan, and I suggest we discuss how he took his first steps in animation, because his path was quite unconventional one, and as far as I know, his educational background was also not something typical for this kind of path. Vladimir, how about you? It all started with the biological department of Kyiv-Shevchenko University. First I studied there, and then Oleg Pedan. We met at work, the Center of Radiological Medicine. He was working in one lab, and I was working in a different one. He didn't quite like that work. He didn't want to work on a thesis, to defend his thesis, and he didn't want to be engaged in the challenges that the institute was faced with. He wanted to do something handmade, something that would be useful. So he found a workshop that was making pipes. He learned how to do them, and he quit it because you had to sell it yourself. But he was not good at doing that. Afterwards, he also learned how to work with ironwork. He worked with a blacksmith, and then a number of other professions that he mastered. And once, he simply decided that he wants to go and work with woodwork at a workshop to learn doing that. First, he was working with wood at Anima film. Then he was working with props, because they saw that he's really good at doing things manually. And then, thanks to Nataliia Marchenkova, he became director and animator. Together, they worked on Iron Wolf. Then he learned how to write scripts, and this was the beginning of his path in animation. I also wanted to ask, it was back in the 90s. What was the atmosphere back then at the studio before he debuted? It was very kind, very creative. There were lots of ideas, lots of cartoons that were drawn, made of Play-Doh. Different types of cartoons that were created at that studio. Cutout animation was also worked with, and people liked it. They knew that they are doing something meaningful in their life. And at the same time, it was a full depression, because nobody knew what's gonna happen tomorrow, what's gonna happen with the studio. Will there be funding in this field or not? But people still kept coming. They wanted to do something. In the 80s and in the 90s, there was lots of work. Well, but rather, I would say that it became more depressing in the beginning of the 90s. But we still managed to produce Iron Wolf before it all started going down. Then I suggest we talk about the Iron Wolf. That was his debut as a director in 1999, and it was produced together with you. So how were you co-directing it? How were you splitting responsibilities? When Olek was working as a puppet master, He was manually creating all of the puppets all the time. And in the studio, we had a special training program. There were people who were coming to these training programs. We were teaching younger people. So if younger people came to learn, they were working with somebody as apprentices. And Sveta Kutsenko, whom Oleg took an editor, yes, to whom he brought all of her scripts. He wrote 2 scripts on the basis of Ukrainian fairy tales. The one was about the egg, and the second one was this Iron Wolf. And he kept writing the scripts Sveta taught him, and then she finally said, okay, but you know, this is complicated. This is a complicated job. You should get together with somebody else, find some director who doesn't have something to do, and I was the one who didn't have anything to do back then. So Oleg brought the script and I kept reading it, and I realized that it was very interesting. All of the puppets were interesting. There is a wolf made of iron. There was one really funny character. There was an old grandpa who looked like an old tree stump, and 2 witches that looked like frogs. So every character had some interesting characteristics to them. So we did the storyboard, wrote down the dialogues, composed music, worked with actors, and this Iron Wolf, who was the main character. This is the first version. It is different in the film, but this is the first sketch that was made by a really good artist, Sergei Sashnikov. This is what it looks like. And this is the thing that he used to walk. These were his legs. This was one of his legs with a wheel. So he was riding on set. I'd like to say that this puppet animation requires lots of patience and requires a person to know how to do things yourself, because all of the props, everything was done by Oleg Pedan. He was doing the set, using foam, covering up with different pieces of cloth and fabric, painting it. So all of these things, by the way, in all of the next films, he also did all of the puppets himself. Thank you. I also wanted to find out, I don't know who can answer this question, what did his workshop look like and where was it located? I read that there was some equipment there, but it was quite a small territory. So can somebody tell? Yes, of course. It had different tools which allowed him to create these puppets. Was what he was doing different compared to other puppet masters working in the studio? Well, I think that everything that people did there, they were doing it. I don't know how to answer that question, actually. I think Mila can answer that question. I can answer that question. He had a real workshop at home on his balcony. Oh, and this is where all of his tools stayed, all of the equipment that he used to create his puppets, because we couldn't rent a real workshop because it was way too expensive. So I decided that one balcony will be used by me, where I can dry the laundry, and the other will be his workshop. What was the work process like? Could you interfere? You could take a look. You could look at him working. Some things were even solved together. I was saying that I like this and I dislike that, so I had the right to express my opinion regarding some of his creations. And And was he open to criticism? Yeah, he always accepted very positively. He agreed with some things, and regarding some, he still did it the way he wanted. I wanted to find out whether to Ukrainian animation film there was some kind of training school. Maybe there were some apprentices, because he said that Jan Taran and, if I'm not mistaken, Anatoly Radchenko were the ones from whom he learned. So how were they working in the workshop? Was it lots of weirdos working together? Who can answer that question? When I came to the studio, there was neither Radchenko, there was nobody. It was 2003, and I started working on a key film. I just came there and I started working with puppet production and creation. And there was barely anything there in terms of puppet creation. Well, even talking about the location, we're located in different places. It was undergoing another reorganization, and we decided that the puppet workshop will be on the second floor, so that pavilion and everything was created together with Olek. He was a real master, and he was also partially doing it for himself, because to shoot films you had to create pavilions, sets, and all that. Everything that is necessary for the production process. And then in 2003 and 2004, we created that. And till the end of 2000s, Olek shot several more films till 2007. And Oksana Papush. Back then, well, I wouldn't say that it was too much, but we were filming different animated films with puppets. Oksana Karpush also produced one. Shmigun Alexander also filmed one, a play for 3 actors. And Oleg also was filming, because this was his creation. Every year or every 2 years he was filming something till 2007. So he created 4 films. He worked in a really fruitful mode. So he finally got his hands on it. He was working with scripts, ideas, and kept working. These were the best times, as far as I understand. I think Mila can add something about that. Until 2007. That's true. Because he felt alleviated. Because, you know, when you keep working and you have the opportunity to do what you like. And he had everything he needed. He had ideas for the scripts. He had artistic ideas. That is why we, of course, started using computers. Everything was computerized. So yes, anima film, well, I don't want to say that it was its renaissance, but still, we kept working actively at that time till 2007 and 2008. But, well, then this story changed.
Yes, it turned out that after the last films, The House for a Snail and the smallest one, there was a rather long pause up to 2013, when there was the movie named 201. So why was that pause? No, only till 2011. Well, because funding was not there, everything was just left behind, both puppet film and We wanted to launch Popeye, the full-length film. Natalia has done. No, not me. Not me. It's not mine. There were some different things like that, but there was a pause. But then, how can I say? How can I put it? Another reorganization, one more, which created the State Cinema Commission, the pitching system, and all of that was rather desolate and neglected. Well, I do know that that's why I'm telling that. So Oleg, met him in the corridor, I met him in the hall, and there was no work, so I was asking, how are you? We have the pitching system now, you should try. And he said, well, in some words which I wouldn't pronounce for the audience, it's a matter of obscene words, but still, he thought a bit about that. Then he called me the other day and said, I've got a script. Then he sent me his script, The Cow. And the film was the number 201, The Anti-Utopia, which I liked a lot. So we took the money for this movie and we created this film. And then there was the new stage, the new level with 4 movies, which we created. The second stage was with a different mood, because the job began, there was an opportunity to work and to implement your ideas for the creator, for the film director, for a creative person. Well, after The Cow, we didn't know whether will be a continuation, because there was a long pause, but then The Cow number 201, which is named now just 201. No, not like that. When we created The Cow number 201, we had the movie entertainment, and we had been at the pitching. Then a different producer decided to try it as the amusement ride. A very nice idea, the script, he wrote those ideas and they were just radiating from him. It's been a whole fountain of ideas, so we won again, everybody liked it, we got the funding. There was a small pause there, but still we had certain uncertainty. When we finished The Cow at Podil, part of the city, the final sound, Katkov, me and Leonid Belay went for coffee and we asked Oleg, what will we do next? Well, it was for you, like that. The management was already preparing some of the newer points, the same as happened when we made the Circus on the Wire, in spite of the bad news about the health, we prepared the script. So, yes, he finalized that, but we had the script. We were ready. We even convinced him. He said that he almost had everything. We said, well, let's make it with our own resources. We've got the studio, you've got the ready models and everything. We don't mind, so let's do that. Let's create the music and do on our own. If they don't give money, we'll do that without the money. So we created the film of amusement. A very nice idea, a very nice script. And we were really convincingly winning the pitching process, and we got the nice movie in the end of the day. Yes, the amusement. It's a pity that I didn't take the whole platform with the amusement park. I didn't know where to put it, you know. Where is it now, by the way? The platform. Well, I think we dismantled it. Yes, we dismantled it into bits. Took it away. There was a huge and wonderful platform of this size, where all those models and the amusement park was shot, the streetlights, the benches, all of that. But we didn't have a space for it. Iryna, you were the DOP at the amusement movie. Not only, I can correct you, well, the DOP, of course, as well, but she also used to be his both right and left hands. She used to be the assistant, the helper. She was not only the DOP, this is, well, for sure, but she was also a kind of a... Well, the director's assistant. Yes, I took a new profession. She was like this. And the DOP. Everything we can see is done by her, I mean on the screen. That's done by Iryna. Would you please tell, Iryna, in the film of amusement, there are some complicated shots. The camera is moving in a complicated way. How did you make up your mind what should be shot in which way? Yes, there are lots of complicated ways of camera movement, but all of that was done by Oleg. My main task was to create the lighting, to make everything beautiful, but all the technical parts were invented by Oleg. He was a great inventor. But the main thing for me was to have the focus, the picture, the light, and all the rest was done by Oleg technically. Yes, once I came to the shooting room and I was just amazed. I was in awe. I've never seen anything in my life. They created the set design. Some road in the park, it's snowing, the streetlights along the road, and on this road, there is something on it, and there is the camera moving along it. I was just shocked, because they shot a kind of a camera movement along the road. So it seems you could just take the zoom in or zoom out and you will create a zoom in. No, he decided to invent it in a different way. He brought some rails, he put a camera on them, and frame by frame they moved the camera along the road, and this is the way how they shot it. The real, totally real, as it's done in the bigger feature films, the movement along the road. Yes, Oleg invented that, true. Oleg was really inventive. But it was not the puppet movie, it was the subject movie. Yes, I've never seen that in my life, so he invented that. Well, Oleg was a real master. For all of those appliances, he tried to invent something and to think of something new. We've got lots of money and sheeps, and do you know what they did? They brought two 6-liter 6-liter jars full of money, full of fake money, and the whole studio even helped us bringing coins. They even emptied their pockets to bring the money. So, as for the jars and pennies and kopecks, like coins, so we had to swim through them. Everybody brought us money in the bags, and all of that money was invested into animation, true. So he created lots of models out of coins. So we are now speaking about the film of amusement. If you haven't seen it, you've got an opportunity up till the end of the day to watch the retrospective within the Linoleum Festival at Megogo website. So I'd like to come back to the movie of 201. We have 3 characters from this animation movie, 3 cows and a robot dog. So Iryna, I know that you also have closely cooperating on this work. You launched the process for a long time. Could you tell more about that? Because we heard a moment of the producer's way from Volodymyr. Oleg asked me, could you please be my DOP? I'd like to have such a script. He gave such a script to read. I read it, and I didn't get it. And I said, okay, so I agreed in some case. And thanks God I did it, but it was a year before we began the shooting. But then everything was very convenient working with Oleg. He invented everything on his own, he did everything on his own, it was very convenient. I deserve only the lighting accolade and to have everything very precise. Yes, it was really convenient to work with Oleg. He invented everything, he could do anything, you didn't need to go anything. Everything he invented, it could be done by him, and he always did it. So he didn't even let me replace the light bulbs in the devices. I am the DOP, I had to replace the bulbs. By the way, one of the cows has a sore leg. Do you remember why? Why? Why is it lame? Why, one of the legs was broken off. So half of the movie is just lame. So the construction just did not stand it. We had a huge break, and when we prepared the production for about 5 or 6 years, everything was totally declusive, nothing was working, everything was neglected. The pavilion was like this. So we came in. We looked around at the movie, should have been prepared for the production, for the launch. And then well, it was the second time with my participants, when we had to restore the working atmosphere, all of the sets and all the rest. Because, you know, when 5 or 6 years no one went in, everything was so neglected, nothing was working. So we had to restore, we had to create the repairment works with our own forces, all the technique and all the equipment, all the technical part, the devices and the lighting. All of that was done, well, not by us, but by him, by Olek. Well, he was launching the process, so for me it was rather convenient. But he did everything necessary for it to work. True. So we were working under the conditions without any heating. We were working during the winter and we had to put on warm sweaters to work under these winter conditions with all the heaters from all of the sides. So this is how we worked. In the gloves even sometimes, because it was really cold. Yes, it was hard. The heating was not there for several years. For about 10 years we didn't have heating at the studio. I don't know, somehow it was working still, but it was a nice work. Well, the devices, sure. It was nice. It was a short period when we shot 3 movies. When was that? What period are you speaking about? 2012 and 13. The Cow number 2001, 201, then The Amusement, then The Ragdoll Man. Then again we created the movie, but at a different studio. We created the movie The Circus on the Wire, but again the basic studio was Ukrainian film. We were discussing with the crew whether we need to go there, because on the one hand everything was even worse there. But we communicated a bit and the crew agreed that they have their own set, everything is ours, we know that. So again we had to restore all of that. It was kind of neglected again and desolate, but again we had to restore everything for the movie and created the last movie. Everyone who came was asking how we were, but everything was really bad. The studio was not working, there were no departments, only one crew, no one else. There was no one at the studio. So the group with Anastasiia, the animator, this is how we were working, 3 of us. There was no one there. 3 of us was working there on the Ragdoll Man. Only 3 of us, Oleg, me and the artist Igor Katkov. So we 3 of us came and there was no one else. So again, the studio was redone and restored, if I may say so. So it cannot be restored anymore. I would like to ask Mr. Andriy Obod, you as a sound designer, would you please tell how you worked with Oleg Pedan? Did he appoint some task for you, or maybe he gave some materials and let you do whatever you want? Oleg always had very precise ideas. He knew what he wants, first of all, but it was not like without any doubts, only like this and nothing else. Of course, he considered different ideas of the composer, of mine. He trusted us. Since the first movie, I was working with the composers together in the mix, and we were not just creating music to have music, just to fill the gaps, no. In fact, it played a very artistic part how he wanted it to work. Sometimes the track had to be re-recorded for about 5 or 6 times, not only because of the length, but because of the character of the music. Sometimes he had to experiment and change the composers. There was the story when they hired a very famous composer, and during the process of the last movie creation, no, not the last one, Ragdoll Man, they replaced him, but with less known, but still he showed the proper result. Well, this is not in the character of Olek to change in half the road, but there was such a necessity. It was wonderful to work with him. He was very calm and quiet, without any mess, which sometimes happens with the creative people, some emotional rise, which is coming into and transforming into mass slowly. But Igor Katkov came to us, and sometimes he even slept at the sofa. "Oh, is that it?" he asked, "for today?" Okay. Yes, it was coming quiet. It's a pity he didn't join us today. So what's wonderful about that, Oleg has been working in the studio as the Foley artist. He was voiceovering some of the voices and dubbing them. The only voice he has in the movie about the cow was shouting, that was Oleg's voice. No, really, it was funny, in fact. Well, it should be like this, in fact. Well, this is not puppet movies. This was the subject movie. We couldn't say that we're creating the puppet movie. No, this is the subject movie. I don't know whether we could say that, but still we said this is the subject movie only. So I was really amazed when with 2 6-liter jars they brought the money, and I was sitting online searching for money, and I was just collecting the coins with my friends. I needed some kopecks, some pennies. I had several piles of money to create something, but then they brought 2 jars. They just pour it onto the carpet, and it was working. So I was provided with the sound of money for many years. Of coins, I mean. So even during the disease, whatever it was complicated and hard for him, he was very positive. Me and all the other people were a bit shy because of Oleg's disease, but it was the banned topic. No compassion, otherwise I'll kill you. He never tolerated compassion. We're working, that's it, he said. So the atmosphere was always mega positive. Everybody knows, and nobody will let me lie, though. There were, when he said that everything should be 3 times, not 2 times, everything should be 3-staged. 3 steps, 3 pumps, 3. Everything should be 3 each time. I'd like to remember another thing. We don't have Igor Katkov here. This is not just an artist and set designer. He is even the closest partner, the friend. Yes, the friend, the partner. He used to be the one with whom you could discuss something. So it was not just an artist. He was just, how could I put it, very close, single-minded person with whom he did it. He created movies. He was also an assistant. He did everything. Yes, and he advised and recommended a lot. Yes, so this was a very close person in the creative and not only creative way, the person for him. So I'd like, and for me as well, it was so important because the artist, when I need to deal with lighting, I always decided to call Igor, and we decided to do that together as one unified team. Yes, Igor Katkov. In fact, he never slept. That was a joke. He was controlling the process. But he didn't have anything to do so. But he was still keeping everything under control. When we were stagnating, we needed the 3rd person. And then Igor could advise. Yes, what? Let it be like this. So I wanted to remind Igor Katkov for sure. It's a pity he's not here. Well, he couldn't join us because he left, but still. He's such a person who was very close. A very important person and a very talented artist, a very talented one. But he told me, when I suggested to take part in different movies with the director, he said, I'm working only with Igor, Oleg said. And then he left the cinema, so Igor was his, well, maybe not the mascot, but he was working with him only. Igor is a very talented person. He had such sketches. As for the cow 201, This is the film where we had the drone installs, and I'm really happy that we had it in this movie, where everything what we discussed can be seen on the screen and have been implemented. All of the tricks. But those drop-ins which are drawn in the movie of 201, they were meant from the very beginning. Yes, yes. Well, in Pedan's movies, there is not that many parts, but subjects. The Key has a bit of computer animation. 201 has a bit of drop-ins and interrouts. Yes, we experimented. We discussed that. We thought in some other pictures that we could add that. Oleg was always very open for the experiments, that's for sure. We could experiment with him with anything. And with the picture and with the sound. True. So was it something that you invented something at the set, or maybe changed out of, in comparison with what was written in the script? No. He was precisely knew what he's doing. The only thing, I had to follow the number of the episodes because they were changing momentarily and instantaneously. I was asking him how could that be, because we cannot collect all of them then. But he knew very exactly what should be done. Well, what made Igor distinct? Directors do that in a different thing, but he really understood what should be. He had the whole picture, and when the director knows how he shoots, it's rather important. He always was very sure, and the producer was sure what they were doing, because besides the creative part, what's named the production process, I was sure that we will create the movie in a timely manner, we'll do that and finish it timely, there won't be any issue. It's always very important, this confidence, this reliability. It always brought us to finalize the movies timely, even before this deadline. As Oleg said, we have the age mode. When we come at 11, we are leaving at 3 p.m. But we had enough time to shoot everything. Yes, the preparation work was substantial, as when he came home, he had to create some dolls. The director's work is not over at the set, or the crew is not over with its work 11 till 3. This is the shooting process, but to shoot everything efficiently and to find the proper feedback, you needed to prepare everything beforehand, and as far as I understand, the whole preparatory work was done at the balcony. But he also could nicely alliterate all the subjective images he imagined. So the problem is always to create, the issue is always to objectivation, to tell the other participants how he sees it. But Oleg managed to do that in a worthy manner. He explained that how we understood what he wanted to achieve. So his subjective objectivation was going on without any losses. I would like to get to know how other animators were cooperating with Oleg. Natalia, you've been an animator at the Bright Personality and the Key, if I'm not mistaken. Well, first of all, Oleg had an animator that is himself. In all of his next films. I do remember that in the Iron Wolf, we had the animators, the older puppet animators, Jean Taran, then we had, if I'm not mistaken, I cannot remember. At the Iron Wolf, besides him, there were two more animators, and Olek was trained, because he was training during the process. He never did animation before, so he wanted to study looking at the older animators. So first he created the first little episode, then everybody looked at it and said, well, you need to adjust it a bit to correct it. This is very nice, but that's not. Then he created the next one, then he shot more and more, and gradually he got to know how to do that. But before that, the process of the shooting was awful. It was disgusting. First, you needed to put the film, the film for the development. So it was done with the real film. You put it into the development, they develop the film, then you need to wait for the time when it dries, then they print the positive part, and then we can see the real ready footage. So 3 days. 3 days? Well, this is the speedy process, but I would say that this is a week and a half. And for instance, we had 2 sets. One set where Oleg shoots, the other set is where Jean Taran is shooting, and the third is where I'm shooting. So the whole shooting set is just divided by with the curtains, and Ira is going through all the sets, putting the light, she puts the film in, brings it to the development. I've been to be the second DOP in the Iron Wolf. Yes, and who was the first one? Alexander Nikolaenko, true. So this was the shooting process, and the sets where the animators were working at, they were created in a way for them not to be moved and not to be trembling, because the shooting room was at the ground floor, and behind the window we could see the Brovarsky Avenue. So we had to stick it, we had to put them into concrete, and they were done out of big pipes, you know, just huge metallic pipes, which are rather heavy, and they have this set design on it. So the props and the set design was done by Padan himself as well. So if you need to sew anything, any costume, he decided to do that on his own at the sewing machine. You know, the person who knows how to sew and how to crackle all the little socks and pockets, everything was the work of his own hands. So this is how we created the Iron Wolf. And then we got a prize at some festival, and the prize, the award, was... What was the name? What you fry in the oil, where you put 3 liters of oil? Yes, we had the proper cheap fryer or frying machine. So they brought it just here. What can we do with that deep fryer? Nobody knows. We didn't know how to turn it on, because we needed 3 liters of cancerogen of that oil, I mean. So we didn't know what to do with that frying machine, either at the pavilion or it just was brought. And then Alexander Nikolaenko, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure, brought it to his country house. I'm not sure where it vanished to. So it was funny how we worked there. But as for the animators, Oleg was working on his own. Yes, he got to know how to work it properly. When there were the most complicated scenes and episodes, we had the leading animator, Andriy Obod, but he has a big issue. He always breaks his arms and legs. Yes, he's very victimized. So still in he still is doing everything. He's very in plaster on his arms and hands, but he said, I don't know how to dance, so Anastasiia will dance for me. So Anastasiia was a beautiful dancer. And when Oleg got sick, in fact, she had to shoot the film up till its end, so thanks to her as well. Thanks to her, the movie was finalized. Okay, let me then ask you, Anastasiia. Yes, his favorite pupil, his student, he was really expecting a lot from her, the best student, and the same expectations and hopes, but she's a good girl. We do hope. So when you created the latest episodes together, no, we created approximately 8 minutes together. We had to finalize after him. Oleg has done, in the latest film, Circus on the Wire, he totally made the hands of the girl and the boy, but when the circus itself began, we had about a month of a pause, of a break, when we found out about the sickness, about the disease of Oleg. So we had a month and a half of conservation, of the stoppage, and then Nastya and Anastasiia began to shoot, and then Andriy Sleptsov joined, and they made it together. They finalized the movie.
We started shooting from when she turns to a girl, and I remember that the compass fell to parts, and I remember that all of the parts were falling apart. And were you sticking to the script? You knew every single fragment, and you knew what to do. That were you also adding something to it because you had to finalize it with the author not being present with you anymore? Yes, we did it according to the script, and we always had a storyboard as always. And I kept asking Oleg, is that right or not, and what it should look like. And this is how we finalized it. But when he could not oversee the process completely, we were just producing bits of a film and showing it to him. I don't really remember because we had to do a lot of work every single day. And I don't know, I just was going to the place where we were shooting, got my hands on it, and was working, so I cannot even recall it. And did you have to redo a lot? No, because we always understood one another with Mr. Padan really good. We had very alike styles and similar views and opinions about animation, so I don't remember when we had to really redo something. He could say that I don't like this thing, could you slightly change it? I did, and that's it. Could you please tell then about Oleg Pedan as a teacher? You trained under him for almost a whole course. Mr. Padan was a very kind person, but he at the same time was very strict with me because he wanted to raise me as a good animator. And if somebody was allowed to not bring the paper, I had to bring two instead. And I'm extremely grateful to him for that. Because I came there back as a kid, I was 16 years old, and he told me first that everything that I've brought with me, because I was creating some things before I entered university, he said that these are not films, you should not show to anybody. And I was so sad, I thought that he didn't like it. But as I was told afterwards by our second teacher, who was teaching us animation after Mr. Padan, that this is how he was checking me, whether I really want to do that or not. And it appeared to be that I'm really willing to. And he created a magical atmosphere in the educational process, and all students loved him for that. And even sometimes students from other departments came to his lectures who dreamt of being taught by him. Some of them were taught by others. But I didn't spend that much time in a university, more time producing things. So we were working with him either individually on Saturdays during private classes, or also when producing something. Do you know how he was picking those who would be instructed by him and those who would not be instructed by him? How was he picking his people? I don't know, I was recently asking Kasaeva about that, and she said that she has no clue. But I believe that he chose me because I love I love puppets, and I love also doing skeletons. And I brought lots of puppets with me and was showing some things to him. And among those who were entering, there were not that many puppet masters, so I cannot imagine anybody else except Mr. Padan who would train me, because we didn't have any other puppet masters. Also, in his intro, I don't know whether he was just kidding or whether he was serious, he said that puppet animation is kind of animation that is going extinct. Did he ever mention that? No, he was just kidding. I believe that for Mr. Padan, only puppet animation was the only medium that existed. 3D became popular and After Effects became popular for a certain period of time, but now everybody goes back to stop motion, puppets, and analog production, so he was just kidding. Did he make any comments about modern ways, what he likes or what he dislikes? Yes, he didn't quite like bright colors. He liked natural type colors. And he didn't like present-day Disney. And when I brought him one of the reviews that I had to write about Rapunzel story, he said, "Nastya, is it okay if I don't read it? I don't want to read about Disney." And I was like, "Oh, well, okay." I think Mr. Padan likes any style that is holistic and that is interesting. He simply likes good quality. I know that you're planning to create a film about him. Could you please tell about that? In the nearest 3 months, I will be creating a 3-minute film about director. I believe that our last meetings in a university, as he didn't know, I recorded our conversations 15 minutes. I was simply keeping it next to him, and I was recording our conversation about paper mache, and I thought that I had to do that. And he explains how to create paper mache, and everything is so consistent that it falls into his concept of directing things. And I remember once one girl was late and he says, okay, you can come in. I just have started explaining how the whole process works, and this is what it's going to start with. And then he tells that you have to do that in several layers, 6 or 10. So 6 or 10 films before you become a good director. And this 15-minute monologue of paper mache will be something that I will cut out, and I want to film his bear that sits in the front, because he always kept saying that he wants to be a bear and go across Romania border to eat raspberries there. That is from the amusement. He's very similarly looking like that bear, and it will be acting there. And a girl who looks like me, Katsumi, from one of my latest cartoons. It's gonna be half drawn and half puppet. There will be also coins and different tricks that Mr. Padan liked, but through the prism of my vision. I also know that Mr. Padan had a YouTube channel where he was making videos explaining how he creates it. It still is there. Yes, there's that YouTube channel. There is also a cool video that can be found there. I think Ludmila can tell more about that. Who was it for? For everybody. He wanted to share his knowledge, his skill. He wanted everybody, both students and the rest of people who are interested in animation, in this thing of creative work, to simply see how easily this can be done. Well, it was easy for him, at least. But he was explaining everything step by step so that anyone could understand how this is done. And when did he start teaching? He realized that he wants to teach, right? That he wants to share his experience, or was it something coming out from him? He was invited to Karpenko-Karey University as the professor for puppet animation. He was even working on curriculum, the learning program of what will be taught. He was choosing the materials for lectures. He was speaking it all on his own and training students. So it was important for him to share his knowledge with the common generations. Yes, if I'm not mistaken, your daughter also did or does animation. Yes, she followed in her father's footsteps. Back in the 3rd grade, he brought her and her classmates to the studio. She liked it. She graduated from Karpenko-Kary Institute, and she majored in director's work, and she also created a film, Run or You Will Be Caught, about a cockroach that lives in a bank and sleeps on money and goes to apartments to get something tasty. And my hand is even there with slippers. I'm trying to destroy this cockroach. And it won a Globe in Belarus, a 2nd prize, I think, when the students were submitting their works for that competition. She works at the advertisement agency working on 3D animation. And she was instructed by Savakon. This was her teacher. And he saw what she was doing as a father, and probably also commented upon her work. Well, what she was doing as a 3rd-year student, he helped her, gave her advice and said, you do it on your own, and I'm gonna give you some recommendations, what can be made more interesting or mended. So he was also overseeing that process. I've read somewhere that Oleg Pedan had lots of scripts. Are there some stories that were not implemented? What was he planning to do next? There are lots of them. About 10 scripts. All of them are in a folder. I'm keeping them. And the last script is about robot country. Two characters are now standing on the table. He even already crafted the characters. He had lots of drawings. This, right? This. Yes. Such a beauty. Very beautiful. And I cried so much because that didn't happen. I felt so sorry because I read a script. It is incredibly interesting. Very beautiful. And I would like this film to see the world. It was supposed to be a short. Yes, a short. Was he discussing plans with the USA producer? We did. But I think that we will somehow get back to this topic. We gotta do that. We gotta discuss it. Because it is on hold for the time being. But there is nothing that's impossible. All is possible. All is possible is, well, not a motto of mine, but I believe that everything is possible, and I keep repeating it to myself all the time. Then I'd like to touch upon the next topic about the creative heritage. Because now we very often lose things, and when we're talking about the Museum of Film, and maybe someday we even are gonna have the Museum of Animation. So what is the situation around the creative heritage? Oleg Pedans, maybe these puppets that friends and family are keeping, maybe they have to be in museums, maybe you need some assistance from the state or some grant aid. How should you keep all of these material things? May I interrupt? Oksana Karpus, our director, also working with puppet animation. Back during Katerina Kopylova times, we have written that we have to create animation museum. and give all of the film archives to this museum, everything that was drawn, the puppets that were created, because there were lots of things. For only one drawn film, there can be 20,000 of celluloids, and all of that is being thrown away to the wastelands. And we sent it to the Ministry of Culture, but as you see, nothing has changed since. And all of these puppets that people have at home, I have a ton of different archives at home, as well as Igor at home. All people who used to work at the studio, they have something, a folder with some invaluable material. And I feel so sorry that nobody pays attention to that, because if it all was in a museum, if there was some kind of a venue with some stands for it all, well, unfortunately, that's not the case. In 2013, 2014, and 2015, we had a group of active people. Yeah, we were writing long letters. We were working with Oksana Karpus, and we even worked on a concept of a museum. We even did some blueprints. And it was not supposed to be simply a museum, but a center of Ukrainian animation. Because you can also watch some animated films, create something. Yeah, we wanted to have some place for the kids to play with it, and we wanted to do that with Ukrainian film, but you see what happened with it. Next, I personally was sending a film to Kiev City Council. I wanted, how do I put it? I wanted to create something about beautiful viewpoints in the city of Kiev, so that you can come and look at it, because what Natalia said, we still have all of these material things. Back then, we wrote a letter to the state film agency, to Dovzhenko Center. We had to do that together with somebody, having united our efforts. There is a museum of films at Dovzhenko Center, but you understand that animation, we have lots of material starting 60s up to the present day. There were lots of things, a lot of cultural heritage. Because I also worked with youth, trained painters and animators, and nobody knows a lot about our cultural heritage. Well, now people know more because the films are being demonstrated, but many people are not aware of the artists who created them. But at the same time, there are lots of materials, and it is very upsetting that we don't have the opportunity to show it all. But I believe that it would have been a very interesting project, creating some place where the youth can see that we are in no way worse than the Europeans or the Americans. Of course, they have Disney, something huge and commercial project, but we also have things that we would like to tell about, things that we would like to show. We have somebody who can lead you by example, and Oleg Pedan is one of such people. And Nataliia Marchenkova, no matter where you go, there are so many great people. Oh, stop it. Sorry. When we were working on this project, remember, there was this history hall, and there we wanted to keep the first things that were used in cartoons, like stroboscopes, and I thought that Olek will be the one doing them, because you cannot purchase them anywhere, because they are not sold, at least in Ukraine. You can buy them from France, all of these different toys. You can also have a look at them at the film museum in Paris. And I kept dreaming that Oleg will craft them, because he was the only person who could craft it all. But then this project was forgotten about. The last time I presented it was in Dovzhenko Center. I was thinking of doing it with them, but they are also undergoing some challenges. But I believe that this is a right idea. And it is very timely, because at the moment we have those who can contribute to it. We still have all of these archives and everything. But still. And it should be done in a way so that you can look at it in a proper way, so that you can go there with children. So here, for example, we see the puppets, but at the same time, not only looking at these puppets, but also being able to see these films, something that was created by these directors and artists, something like that. But, well, we've got what we've got. And do you have sets, storyboards, and characters? Does somebody keep it? What is lost and what do we still have? I have some characters, because some of the characters are being gifted or given as presents to somebody. I'm very sorry, as I have said, that I haven't taken this set that looked really beautiful. Like told me that I can take it, and if we had a museum, it would have been there, because it looked really good. When we had a studio, you could keep it at least somewhere, but now it is even more complicated. You don't have enough space to keep it. But at the studio, well, in the studio, we had a special room, like a storage room, and after we were done working on a film, all of the things were brought there, and when all started going down, all of the scenes from there were simply thrown away, taken to the landfill. By the way, before it all ended, I also saw the last machine from the cartoon about a cow that she was using to do exercise. Well, yeah, I haven't seen it. I remember taking the trees from that cartoon last. So people who were working on it, they still keep it. So we still have all this, but it is necessary to have a proper museum. But they probably don't understand how you can monetize it, what would be the profit from creating it. But I'm very sorry, but I think that the time will come when it will be created. And our festival every year works with retrospective to show those films to people, to make them more interested, so that younger generations start asking questions about what happened in the past, so that they also start doing something with protecting these memories about Ukrainian animation. Maybe there are some people who are privately collecting some of the puppets, something that also needs to be archived and documented. We're not giving ours away. If there will be some cool museum, then probably we will give it to that museum. I will give mine. I also have some things. Everybody owns something. Personal archives. I know more people who have some things. Some have STEM engines and other things from the cartoons that are incredible. It always given as gifts. You just should know who has it and keep it. And if not, then maybe a couple years later we're gonna have a museum like that. Yeah, you gotta know who has what. So you have to look at the end titles, and I'm sure that every person, be it an artist or a composer or director, has something that they still keep. Yeah. I think that if it was implemented, then we would have found the characters. It would be also interesting to have bigger copies of these characters. Again, we need a place for that. In the world, we have beautiful animation museums, and these are quite prestigious museums. People go there on tours, they have to book it in advance. People would love to see how analog films were created, how the films look, how you put them, how you layer them one over another, to take a look at it, not simply looking at the videos on YouTube where some dude is telling about that. And for example, Natasha says that maybe you, Volodymyr, have it, maybe there was something left at the film studio. To not only look at the puppets, but also other things. This is a very important part of the cultural heritage. I think that Nataliia can also elaborate on how many creative persons did many wonderful things. I think about 400 films were done, and it all was done by artists, directors, puppet masters, starting in 1960s. 460 films. 460 films. So this was a large group of people who worked on it, but nobody knows. Nobody knows about Mykola Chervilo. They know 3 or 4 last names, but in fact there were more people. For example, Oleg Pedan. Only professionals know what she did, but for many people, they are not aware. Or Iryna Gurovich, a legendary person in animation, in Ukrainian animation. Those who worked with puppet animation. So basically, all of the experience in animation. And this is what makes me sad. 460 films. And there were lots of people who were involved in all that. Animators were used to produce 15 films a year. Yes. 14 episodes a year. How many hours? More than 2 hours. 2.5 hours a year was produced in animation. And it was the process that never ended. We were done with one film and we started working on another one. And the present-day youth, the new generation, should be aware of that. Not to learn about it only in a university, because as far as I understand, the university students are being taught about that. This is the basic, this is the cultural heritage. Everybody should be aware of it. And the good thing now is that the films are being shown at different TV channels. Whenever I turn on the TV, I see the films that were created by Olek. And I see different films created by him from time to time. And I other see films that were created by other animators. So is he gonna get some royalty? Well, I'm not sure about that. And I know that you can also find it on YouTube. There are tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of views. But except for films, the broader audience should also be aware of people who created these 400 films, to understand that this is something bigger, something more important. I also have one more question to all people present here. Can we talk about the Independent School of Ukrainian Animation and what was Oleg Pedan's place in it? How can we characterize him in this context? And can we talk about some kind of Ukrainian School of Animation? Well, I think we can. Because normally, when you meet some of the animators, they are asking you, who did you study from? You say Padan or Adamovich or Elena Kasavina, and everybody understands right away what is your style, what you're doing. And when you're saying that you studied at Oleg Pedan's workshop, the professionals break down into two teams. Some say, I really wanted to be trained by him. He had only one course. Why did he not start doing that sooner? And the others say, wow, Padan, awesome. I saw him a couple of times in his life, and he is a real wizard. That is why I think that among those who are working with puppets, he is one and the best.
Well, there is the school for sure. There is the school, because here there are the representatives of the school sitting around here, the ones who formed it. They shaped Iryna, Nataliia. Yes, two of them at least. Well, I used to be the handmaid and the drawing DOP when the movie was shot not in the computer but live. But as for the puppeteer and puppet DOP, the first film was with Nataliia Marchenkova, the semi-puppet, the love and death of the usual potato. When she came to me and she said, oh, it's so simple. When I came, it was in fact puppet movie, but only half of the puppets. Halves. And then Iron Wolf, and then we had a huge period with French animation where I gained my experience, and then I began to work with Oleg. And I've been working with Oleg with fun, and happily we became friends, all of three of us, so it was a very friendly team. Yes, this was the team, creative team, a company of three. Nataliia, maybe you could add anything. Could we say that there is a Ukrainian animation school, which is totally separate? And what place was Oleg Pedan's taking? There is some school. So far, I'd like to remind the viewers and spectators that they can pose their questions for the guests of the studio in the comments, in the chat of the broadcast, and we will, of course, come back to all those questions soon. So maybe anybody else wants to tell anything about Oleg Pedan? Yes, I'd like to do that. Well, besides Igor Kotkov, well, we have discussed the composers who were during the last movies. Leonid Belay, I'd like to mention about him as well. And there is the whole group of people there. It's wider, but still I wanted to mention Mr. Belay because the music is rather important. But I also would like to mention about Oleg's participants in the cinema festival of Grok, because he used to be an inseparable, unchangeable participant. Even he created the awards, the character as an award from Grok Festival. He created the prizes, and Oleg Pedan has the group of people, Nataliia Marchenkova. Those are our artists who have created this festival. They were the spirit and the soul of Grok Festival, and Oleg Pedan was also the part of the cinema festival, and it was also a very substantial part for Grok Festival. The movies, of course, but still those artists, including him and his prizes and awards, were constructed and designed by him. They were the symbol of this cinema festival. And also, I'd like to mention, well, it was mentioned above, about his creative part. He also had exhibitions. There were some in the Kiev galleries, yes, at Podil part of the city, where he just exhibited his works. As this is the cinema production, the film direction, the animator's activities, artistic activity. So the teacher's activity, so his creative part was also the activity where he made a lot in his various works. And in the galleries as well, there were several exhibitions like that, where I came and looked at them, I attended to them. It was rather interesting. By the way, Facebook of Oleg Pedan, like Igor Dniprov, wrote some short sketches. If you remember, yeah, sure, auteur, kind of his research. How could I put it properly? The research of the daily life around his house. Yes, he fantasized a lot. Rather interesting and clever ones. I even created a short procedure. I copied all the texts from his Facebook. I was just afraid that the Facebook page would be deleted. He was sorry that some of these things, what he wrote before, they vanished. Well, it seemed that I copied everything down. Good for you. Well, I copied everything during the first weeks when I came back to my senses. I went to his Facebook page. I create all the backups of the works which we created together and went to his Facebook page, and whatever I could find, I copied all of them, because they looked like mini essays. Rather interesting ones. Yes, he fantasized a lot. He was telling so much, and when we stood with Igor listening to that, we could not understand whether he was inventing that, thinking that up, or really it was truth. I can ask you later about some of his stories, to get to know from you whether it was true or not. He constantly told us something at the university, yes, and it was rather truthful. He came up to me and said, Anastasia, you know, I saw a bee today. Yes? Right, but you know what's the most important thing? The honey is the most important thing. I thought. And the dogs. Yes, the dogs had to have the lit eyes. Yes, they had the lit eyes. The eyes were lit from inside. Could you add anything, Natalia, Ludmila? Well, what can I say? There is such a great lack of this person. I feel this lack of him as a friend, as a husband, with whom we lived together for 34 years. There is the lack of his ideas, which he produced almost on a daily basis. You know, I invented this or that thing. What do you think? Whether it works or not? Should I tell it to the students or maybe put it onto YouTube? Well, there is a huge lack of that now. Every morning I say good morning to his portrait. Good morning, I've woken up. When I go to my work, I tell him, you should preserve our house. And when I come back home, I tell him, good evening, I've come back home. I can instantly feel that this person is somewhere close to me. I don't have the feeling that he left forever. I don't have this feeling. Oleg was a very delicate person. There is an interesting moment. Once I sent him an episode online, through the internet, and the next day I asked him, did you watch the episode? And he said, no, I couldn't. The woman was watching the TV, as he said about his wife, the woman. I could not watch the episode. She was watching the TV. The woman was watching the TV. Once he came to our university, and we had only one boy in the group and 6 girls, and he said, Ladies, the woman will have the birthday soon. We need to choose the flowers. Which flowers do the women like? What we said, that's your woman. Maybe you should know which flowers, but I want some unusual ones. And when his daughter had a birthday, he asked what fashionable was for the girls. And when he brought the candies for the exam, so my woman brought the candies for you. I told him, why do you tell that your wife is just the woman for you? And he said, well, this is the custom of our family, that the woman is like Rudyard Kipling's woman, just the woman and the man. While we are waiting for the questions, I can see that so far there are no questions, so maybe to conclude this meeting, there is the question for each of you. What would you tell a person who will watch Oleg Pedan's movies for the first time? I would tell, do not hope that this is just an entertainment thing. Because you need to think when you watch them. Those are very sad movies, especially the amusement. I'm always crying in the end. Yes, I do as well. This is kind of a movie about himself. Well, this little teddy bear who gives him the helmet and tells, let's fly away together, and flies away. And the cow of 201 is also rather hopeless. True, when she goes into the winter, the idea was that the flowers should flourish there, but during the last moment he said, no, we shouldn't add any flowers. The cow is just leaving, and the idea was that there will be the road of flowers, but he refused to use this idea. But the last his movie has a very positive final, as I can see it. You mean the Circus on the Wire? Yes, the Circus on the Wire is the positive one. It's optimistic. True. I could say those films are for everybody. What would you tell to the person who is watching his movies for the first time? I would say, you know who made it? The bear made all those movies. He always wanted to become a bear because he's such a huge and reliable person. I would just tell that it was done, those movies were done by the puppet master, and this is my master. I'm showing Oleg Pedan's movies very often to someone, especially the amusement, and I say, this is what was done by my master, puppet master, that's his special hand, which was not similar to anyone else's. Like the my favorite is the Ragdoll Man. I love all of them. They are all my favorites. When they ask me what film do you like most of all, I said they are all like children to me. The last one, The Circus on the Wire, was the hardest for us, as there was the atmosphere which is not that easy to reflect and to create. So there were constant flashbacks, changes of the characters. We need to show that to the people, because we are telling that to the people, and no one will watch them because we'll tell everything and spoil it. But we could discuss the topic whether we could publish Oleg Pedan's movies at Vimeo, at least, because there are not that many of them on YouTube, and I don't think they will be shown on the festivals, so we could publish them on Vimeo. Well, preparing the festival, we faced the story that some of them were at Megago resource, and besides except the last three, we had to ask them at Dovzhenko Center, because this is the issue, for them to be accessible and at public access. Well, it's not compulsory for it to be for free, but there are some of the stream online services, and it would be nice to help that those movies should be found there. 3 lost movies. Dolby Surround, but which is not that usual. Yes, it was not that usual for such movies. Such movies are not done in Dolby Surround mostly, but we decided, why not? So 3 films, 3 last shots were done in Dolby Surround. If I can find the archive of the previous ones, then maybe I can restore them as well, the amusement at least. We had the idea last year to create such a kind of a cinema screening, a kind of an artistic evening, but because of the lockdown we couldn't. Just to sit together and for the viewers to come, the colleagues to come, his friends, in the broader, wider format. For it not to be online only. Online is not bad as well, but still it's a bit different. And then, in the cinema hall, there could be such an idea to create a special screening, 6 films, that is 60 minutes at least, and we can speak a bit and talk and watch them together in a kind of a different format. I think it can be suggested for the Krok Festival. Krok has planned to organize that. Well, unfortunately, we need to finalize the discussion, so I think everybody who joined us today, I think the viewers that you watched us, I can see that there were lots of people watching us online. And I'd like to remind you that up till the end of this day, you can watch the retrospective of all the films of Oleg Pedan at Megago website, and I think that it would be really nice. Thank you.